We live in a world that seems to be moving faster and faster. We see it in social media, the news, in life. Sometimes it feels like there's not enough time, and perhaps that's why we are influenced not to take those necessary pauses to understand our paths better. It is as if we forget something basic, that today is a consequence of yesterday. And to know where to go, it is crucial to recognize where we come from.
But do we really forget our history? Or is it more convenient not to remember? For some, maybe it's easier not to look back, perhaps out of fear or shame, or to avoid reopening the pain of old wounds. For others, the past is in the past. For them, there's not to seek or find in the past. Just there is no sense in addressing the demands of the present with the formulas of yesterday. It may be easier that way, but is it necessarily better?
Some say if you want to learn about our past, go to books. Others recommend the world of art to see what future lies ahead. But there are others who say that if you want to understand our past, present, and future as a society, look to football. Today, I want to explore this third path. In this mirror of football, which has seen almost everything, we can easily learn about who we are, how we react to adversity, how we celebrate, how we interact with money, power and technology, and above all, how we acknowledge the past and relationships with different political powers. This sport has served in countless ways on a global level. It has been an endless source of joy. It has managed to unite countries, continents, and cultures. But sadly, it has also witnessed the concealment of illegal acts and the orders of different dictators. In the last century, Europe saw the emergence of different authoritarian regimes exploiting football to their advantage and political purposes.
Although much has been said about the impacts of these regimes on football, we forgot to ask how football clubs react to them, especially after these regimes are over. As such, an important question remains unanswered. Do European football clubs promote or suppress their difficult pasts?
Recently, we have seen matches against racism, against inequality, in favor of fair play, but very few, really very few matches against history. After all, facing the past might not be a game for all teams. In some cases, as this documentary will show, the past can become an intimidating rival to confront. In times where societies are demanding countries to reckon with their unspoken past and confront unpleasant facts, football clubs have also faced harsh scrutiny to revisit their difficult heritage. I started investigations in Spain's capital, Madrid, more precisely at Real Madrid's stadium, Santiago Bernabéu. Within this iconic football ground lies the Tour Bernabéu, the city's third most visited museum. Unlike most tourists who seek a selfie with UEFA Champions League trophies and legendary players like Cristiano Ronaldo, my visit aimed to understand how and why Real Madrid promoted or suppressed its history during the Spanish Civil War, a conflict that took more than 500,000 lives and remains a strong source of division in the core of Spanish society. In early August 1936, in the city of Madrid, which would become a symbol of the Republican resistance until the end of the Spanish Civil War, the Popular Front took over the Madrid Club de Fútbol. Under Colonel Juan José Vallejo González, political commissioner of the Popular Front, the club's name temporarily changed to Madrid Deportiva Obrera, and its president, Rafael Sánchez Guerra, was quickly replaced. In the first weeks of the conflict, Spain's capital was amid a complete power vacuum, and club members with opposite views to the Popular Front suffered intense persecution. Real Madrid's legendary president, Santiago Bernabéu, narrowly escaped death for his participation in right-wing political events. Bernabéu spent the first 2 years of the Civil War at the French embassy until finding a route out of Madrid and enlisting with Franco's troops, playing a role in the occupation of Catalonia. In October 1936, with the city of Madrid facing the threat of Franco's troops, and having only played 2 friendly matches against local teams, Real Madrid sought to join the Catalan League, where football was still alive. However, FC Barcelona, raising logistic issues about sharing its stadium and to preserve the Catalan identity of the tournament, vetoed Madrid's participation, leading to the club's disappearance from official competitions.
Despite this challenging scenario, football continued at Old Chamartín Stadium through charity matches, involving sports battalions serving under the war minister.
One of these sports battalions was named after Josep Sunyol, former Republican deputy and FC Barcelona president, assassinated in the early days of the war. According to historians, this battalion, lining up Madrid players, played its first and only match in September 1936 against Atletico Madrid to raise funds for blood hospitals. Not so says Madrid's regional archive, which asserts that it was officially played by the Madrid FC team, which saw its captain, Felix Quesada, posing for a picture with war commandants before and after the victory. At the Tour Bernabéu, however, Quesada, who received a 6-month suspension for his affiliations with the Popular Front after the war, appears as a player representing the club only from 1922 to 1935. In contrast, former defender King Coses was considered a club player during the Spanish Civil War, despite serving with the rebels' troops on the Northern Front throughout the entire conflict. Such a contradiction raised initial questions about the selective nature of Real Madrid's past. In June 1937, Vallejo's departure to the front in Levante marked a significant moment in the club's history, with Colonel Antonio Ortega Gutierrez taking over as club president. Under Ortega's leadership, the club received government subsidies for conceding space for the military at Old Chamartín.
Spanish historians like Felix Marchalay point out that in 1937, Ortega was involved in the darkest episode in the Spanish Communist Party history. He ordered the detention of Andrew Nin, Spain's Marxist leader, who was later tortured and murdered by Soviet secret police in the famous purge of Catalonia.
Ortega's attempt to escape Spain through the coastal city of Alicante ended tragically. He was captured and executed in July 1939, marking the end of communist influence on Real Madrid. Despite Real Madrid's centennial anniversary book showing pictures of Ortega attending events at the Old Chamartín Stadium, he has never been recognized as Real Madrid president.
With the new renovations of the Tour Bernabéu, the club incorporated a small video about the Civil War, but only remembering the assassination of Bernabéu's friend and club treasurer Valero Rivera and the wonder kid Monchin Triana by militia forces. The video also informs how the war heavily affected the club's infrastructure and the squad, but never mentions Ortega or any personality from the Popular Front. Then why does Real Madrid suppress the Spanish Civil War era and some of its key club figures from its popular tourist attraction? To begin to understand this, we need to delve into how the clubs responded to Franco's memory policies in the aftermath of the conflict.
In my interview with the sports journalist Fernando Carreño from Marca newspaper, he commented on how times were under the early years of Franco's regime.
La Guerra Civil tenía un discurso oficial, la Cruzada Nacional de Liberación.
Like our Spanish clubs, Real Madrid followed the rules of the new regime, discrediting actions associated with the defeated side.
In the club's 50th anniversary book, which praises Franco's War of Liberation, Real Madrid insists that the club has always been clean of any sins in an effort to erase out communist influence from its history. In the early months of the Spanish Civil War, Spain's National Defense Board decreed any group or association aligned with the Popular Front as unlawful. With the war over, this decree led Real Madrid to regard the club's seizure by the Popular Front as invalid.
Until today, the club still refuses to recognize key figures and events from that time, including Colonel Ortega and Captain Quesada.
Bernabéu's feelings of hate and revenge against his persecutors had also influenced the club's position in the decades to come. According to Spanish sports historian Juan Nieva Expósito, Bernabéu's personal experience made him erase everything associated with the Civil War, and consequently, the club drew a thick view over that time. After Bernabéu's death in 1978, the club's conservative stance further hardened. Immediately, the conservative political ideologies held by post-dictatorship presidents, combined with the recent impacts of football's globalization, led Real Madrid to bury most of the club's Civil War experience. As the world's most valuable football club, Real Madrid today operates as a global corporation. The Tour Bernabéu, visited by over 15 million people from 100 countries since 2003, is a powerful PR and branding space that focuses on highlighting the club's golden moments.
According to Professor Josep Maria Sabatel from the University of Barcelona, for being a global enterprise, Real Madrid fears sharing its history over the possible links of Bernabéu with Franco's regime and his participation during the Civil War.
Entonces, cuando allí el que ya ha pasado la edad de militar se hace voluntario, o sea, él ya no está en edad de ir al frente, pero él se hace voluntario y participa en una división franquista, que es la de Muñoz Grande, de 150, y participa en la conquista de Cataluña. Y curiosamente en esta época es cuando le dan una medalla individual por su valor en la ocupación. Y cuando termina la guerra, al cabo de unos años, por circunstancias interiores de un club que vive con, digamos, no destaca aún, es escogido presidente del Madrid, y entonces a partir de aquí hay gente que dice que digamos, el espejo de lo que era Franco en la dictadura franquista, en el aspecto político y militar, en el aspecto social, deportivo, ideológico, popular, lo fue Santiago Bernabéu.
Indeed, disclosing Bernabéu's involvement in the Civil War under General Muñoz Grande, who was awarded the Iron Cross by Hitler, could make Real Madrid very uncomfortable.
But it also opens up an opportunity to confront common narratives that tie Bernabéu and the club with Franco's regime.
Lo que sale que Bernabéu no era franquista, o sea, el señor era madridista. Este señor al final se enfrenta con el franquismo gravemente. Claro, se aprovechó de lo que le ofrecía el franquismo, evidentemente. Vale. O sea, era un español muy a la antigua, o sea, un tipo de gente que ahora es muy difícil que te encuentres.
The Romanian journalist Adrian Vogel, whose father had a close connection to Bernabéu while working as a club scout during the 50s and 60s, surprised me during our interview when sharing some episodes between Franco and Bernabéu.
Muy pocas fotos verás de Santiago Bernabéu con Francisco Franco. La razón es muy simple. Santiago Bernabéu no quería fotografías con Francisco Franco. Yo me atrevo a decir en el libro, en Bikinis, Fútbol y Rock and Roll, que Francisco Franco detestaba, que Santiago Bernabéu detestaba a Francisco Franco. Hay unos hechos y hay cosas que yo he vivido que también forman parte de los hechos de las que yo puedo dar testimonio.
Vogel recalls one incident he says highlights Bernabéu's approval of Franco. At a regular meeting at Vogel's house, Antonio Calderón, former club director, was needling Bernabéu over his political views.
Que digo que he oído hablar de política ha sido Calderón pinchando a Bernabéu porque Calderón sí era franquista.
¿Ah, sí?
Y entonces le pinchaba.
¿Y de qué manera?
Pues, no, pero yo sé que él hacía bromas y eran bromas que luego con la edad te das cuenta que son bromas que si a ti te gusta mucho algo o no te gusta algo, pues yo te voy a picar, ¿no? Te voy a chinchar, ¿no?
Examinations by sports historians make the case that the label as the regime's club is unfair for many reasons. They argue it was Franco who forced the regime's association in order to make the club an ambassador of Spain overseas, as it lifted one European Cup after another. Supporting this view, Fernando Carreño recalled how former club vice president Raimundo Saporta used to explain how Real Madrid navigated Franco's regime.
Al cabo de los años, Raimundo Saporta, la mano derecha de Santiago Bernabéu y un dirigente importantísimo, que ahora está un poco olvidado, pero vamos, hay que ponerle su valor, le preguntaron al respecto y decía: nosotros en la monarquía fuimos monárquicos, en la república republicanos y en el franquismo franquistas. A ver, es una cosa que yo más o menos, no diré que dijo, pero que me inspiro cuando de vez en cuando me preguntan, ¿pero el Madrid era el equipo del gobierno? Digo, a ver, en tiempos de Franco todos los equipos eran del gobierno.
Final reason influencing Real Madrid's stance of suppressing most of the civil war from its historical timeline relates to the Spanish society's ongoing struggles with this era.
Por un lado, el Madrid puede pensar que, uno, a los extranjeros, a los turistas, no les interesa mucho eso, porque es una cosa muy pasada, y por el otro puede crear algún conflicto con los nacionales, o sea, con la afición. Entonces quizá pues bueno, al fin y al cabo nadie lo va a echar en falta si lo quitamos.
After Franco's regime ended in 1975, Spanish politicians embraced a pact of forgetting, avoiding debates about the civil war and Franco's regime in the interest of national reconciliation. However, this pact proved short-lived due to the country's political divisions and the complex dynamics of collective memory. In the 21st century, the declassification of Spanish Civil War archives and the opening of mass graves influenced the Spanish Communist Party to pass a historical memory law in 2007. This law, while honoring the memories of Republican victims, also ordered the removal of Franco statues from public spaces. Right-wing parties react quickly, accusing their opponents of rewriting history and restating division over Spanish society.
The perception while traveling and speaking with locals is that the civil conflict continues to form part of this country's political identity.
Pues por lo que os he dicho, porque la guerra civil yo creo que no ha terminado todavía del todo y cada bando la cuenta como quiere.
While echoing similar views, Professor Josep Maria added that football became a natural reflection of Spanish society's memory battles over these difficult pasts.
La larga sombra de la Guerra Civil Española, que está aún en muchos sectores de la sociedad española, en sectores sociales, culturales, educativos, deportivos, de la memoria colectiva, sí, la prueba está de que España es el país del mundo donde tiene más fosas de la guerra civil por recuperar, y han pasado 80 años, fosas de asesinatos, o sea, ¿por qué razón? Porque España vive con mucha dificultad, la España oficial vive con mucha dificultad plantearse realmente el análisis de lo que es la guerra civil y sus consecuencias, y el fútbol no deja de ser en cierta forma un reflejo de esta situación.
My further observations at Atlético Madrid and FC Barcelona's museums confirm how the Civil War remains a source of divergence between clubs in Madrid and distant Barcelona. While Spain's capital clubs maintain a selective silence about the period, the Catalan club features a display dedicated to former President Josep Sunyol, seen as a Republican martyr, who was assassinated by Franco's troops.
Fernando Carreño's reflections on my last question, on whether Real Madrid should discuss the Civil War and some of its key figures and events, remind us that the past never fades, no matter how hard we try to forget it.
Yo creo que a lo mejor esta postura, si lo que tú quieres es tener un club universal, o sea, es como te diría yo, o sea, es como si tú entiendes una cosa mal, o tienes algo que no quieres recordar, o algo que te pesa. Entonces, lo borras en tu memoria, lo olvidas, sigues adelante como sea, pero eso siempre está ahí.
The fight to keep the difficult past alive in the collective memory turns out to be the very symbol of the next club I would visit after my time in Madrid came to an end. This time I traveled to Hamburg, Germany's gateway to the world, to visit FC St. Pauli, one of the most progressive clubs in football. During my stay, I would investigate if the club's experience under the Nazi regime are discussed at the club museum, which was created in 2012 and is managed entirely by fans.
Unlike Real Madrid, FC St. Pauli never won a top-level title or participated in any European competitions. Instead, its global popularity with over 11 million fans comes from a local blend of political activism and football fandom.
The club headquarters is located in the alternative St. Pauli district, most known for its local squatters who promoted the social revolution in the 80s at the famous Hafenstrasse. The club's identity today is directly linked to the left-wing idealism of those rebellious residents who gradually started filling the terraces of Millertorn Stadium, their political practices inseparable from the stadium experience.
In 1991, FC St. Pauli became the first German club to officially ban neo-Nazi and fascist groups, as well as their racist symbols and chants from Millertorn Stadium. They also participated in a compensation fund for forced Jewish labor during the Holocaust.
Since then, the club has seen its politically engaged fans organizing anti-fascist events, building social community projects, and supporting refugees and humanitarian projects around the world.
While known today for its pro-human rights stance, during the Nazi regime, FC St. Pauli had a very different image.
Like all German clubs, FC St. Pauli was shaped by the Nazification societal process, being compliant and quick in its implementation. The commemorative publication for the club's 25th anniversary in 1935 praised the seizure of power by the Nazi Party. In 1941, the club donated around 60 trophies as part of wartime efforts to collect metal for bullets, and 3 years later, when announcing the death of goalkeeper Theo Quest, honored him as a loyal club member who died for the Führer, people, and the fatherland.
For nearly 5 decades, FC St. Pauli considered the focus on politics too disturbing and avoided confronting its difficult heritage. This reflected broader trends in German society's struggles to deal with such a difficult heritage.
As explained by Bastian, a political scientist and fan activist at Babelsberg, for a long period after 1945, most Germans denied their complicity in the Nazi crimes, either as perpetrators or bystanders.
Straight after 45 in Germany, you had mainly a denial of the past. Nobody wanted to be part of the Nazi regime. Everyone said we were not involved or even in the resistance. Almost nobody was really dealing with his own involvement in the Nazi regime. And you had this re-education, denazification strategies by the Allies in Germany, which did not really work well.
Inspired by the students' movement of 1968 in West Germany, which criticized the Pact of Silence and exposed the presence of high-ranking Nazi members at universities, FC St. Pauli fans initiated a bottom-up structural revolution inside the club. This fan-led revolution marked the beginning of a culture of historical revisionism and remembrance to Nazi victims that developed in parallel to a series of wide societal transformations, mostly during Germany's post-reunification.
This period would see the emergence of museums, memorials, events, and national holidays to confront the legacies of the Nazi past. Welcomed by Fabian Fritz, the museum youth education consultant, I visited the Kiesbieben exhibition, named after the club's second birth, referring to how the new political active fans have shaken up the structures of the club.
Exposing how and why these fans transformed FC St. Pauli into a Nazi-free club, the museum celebrates the achievements of the professional politicians, a group of left-wing fans created in 1996
that labored to confront the historically conservative stance of the club linked to the Nazi past.
For instance, visitors are informed about the reasons for the renaming of Wilhelm Koch Stadium to Millertorn Stadium in 1997.
We learned that René Martens, a devoted fan and historian, discovered the Nazi membership of former club president Wilhelm Koch, which was an unacceptable fact for the new anti-fascist fan base. The museum also displays the collective effort in 2011 to strip the Golden Badge of Honor awarded to Otto Wolff, a former player and high-ranking Nazi responsible for sending prisoners to concentration camps. Illustrating the obstacles to change, in 1991, the club's newspaper celebrated the work done by the former SS officer while mourning his death. During the Millertorn Stadium tour, which is part of the museum visit, tour guides intentionally stop at two memorials seen as influential in solidifying a culture of remembrance among fans. The first memorial, created in 2004 by the Fanladen St. Pauli, an independent fan supporter organization, pays tribute to the memory of fans and club members persecuted or murdered by the Nazis. The second, launched in 2008 by the club, honors the memory of the two Jewish brothers, Paul and Otto Lang, who founded the rugby department. They left the club in 1934, suggesting FC St. Pauli was not a safe haven for targets of Nazi persecution. These two memorials have been symbolically placed next to the monument for the German fallen soldiers of the First and Second World Wars, built by the club in 1962. This memorial is now facing scrutiny at the club's General Assembly for representing an unacceptable tribute to Nazi perpetrators.
Over the past decade, FC St. Pauli Museum has been openly engaged in remembering the harshness of National Socialism, which render national recognition.
It does this, for instance, through the annual Remembrance Day in German football and its political literacy workshops for the younger generation of fans.
At FC St. Pauli Fanladen, I interviewed Gregor Becks, author of the book FC St. Pauli Under the National Socialism. There, I could confirm the existence of a shared concern to remember history and fight fascism that derives from the recognition that football is a political act.
When are people saying football must be non-political, in my opinion, it's bullshit. Of course, football has always been political, even especially in Germany. It started after World War I, and it was kind of alternative for military, because Germany wasn't allowed to have a big army, so it sent everybody to football to train the youth. Then football was occupied by the Nazis, and it's the same today. If you don't do nothing political, then there's someone on the stands doing it. I see them in clubs, and especially in Eastern Germany, when they say we're not political, and then you have Nazis everywhere on the stands. So you have to take a stand against it.
In my interview with FC St. Pauli Museum Director Zon Goldbeck, he reinforced football's political nature by defending a biased stance to tackle ignorant views surrounding the Holocaust and its consequences.
Obviously, we are not neutral when it's about opinions that are against the basic human rights or that defend right-wing activities, discriminations, or deny the Holocaust.
Contrasting the common perception that the club's activism is shared by all fans, Gregor Becks informed me instead that has always been the work of a minority.
At the end, it's a little part of the 30,000 people who really live the values of the club and who really is active in this club. Of course, there are lots of people who are interested in politics too, but they're not necessarily activists.
Okay.
And if you walk around here for 2 weeks, you see that you always meet the same people.
Acknowledging this reality reveals how their fight to expose the club's Nazi past has never been free of obstacles and opposition.
In his interview, Bastian from Babelsberg pointed to the legal framework of German football as another reason why FC St. Pauli fans could change the club's official discourse around its Nazi heritage. Popular known as the 50% plus one rule, with a few exceptions, it grants club members the right to vote and pursue structural changes.
So I think that the examples that you gave for clubs which are offensively dealing with their past, very often they also have really democratic structures. And I think that is something that is really important, just like democratic club structures that allow an active participation of the different fan groups and their different opinions.
There's also a perception that I heard before arriving at St. Pauli that the club's left-wing image responsible for bringing tourists to Millertorn Stadium would be damaged by disclosing its Nazi past.
Turns out that fans here consider human rights so important, they are willing to live with potentially harmful impacts on the club's commercial interests. FC St. Pauli Museum has always defended that any commercialization practice must follow fans' anti-capitalist, pro-social justice, and pro-human rights values. Until today, part of the profits, including of souvenirs sold, have been reinvested in social projects supporting anti-discrimination activities in the Harbour Front São Paulo district.
To better understand the German football culture of remembrance, I came to Bremen, a city that breathes football and a left-wing political activism.
Here, I was welcomed by Christoph Pulm, social worker at Werder Bremen Fan Project. In our conversations, I could find that several German fan organizations share the belief that speaking openly about the Nazi past is actually positive for the club's brand reputation.
I think it is the most important thing for all of us that Auschwitz never happen again. And I also think it's a part, or it's a dimension of commercialization in football and for the brand. And I think it's a big problem when football clubs try not to talk about that topic and think it's just historical things, because this is the base that can happen again when they not try to talk about it.
This firm stance to remember and confront the Nazi past at all costs is directly influenced by the new temporal regime, a concept developed by German philosopher Aleida Assmann.
For Assmann, German society, anchored in notions of trauma from the Holocaust, regards the past as vital to understanding the present and building a new future.
Questioning why FC São Paulo Museum promote the club's Nazi past, Zonk, the museum manager, suggested that the past cannot be disconnected from the present.
He pointed out that traces of discriminatory beliefs remain to this day and demand action.
It was important for us to show that it was not just 1933, 1945, it was like some aliens landed in Germany and then vanished and were gone again, but that rather we had the people that were still living normal lives after that and try to hide it, try to ignore it, and ignorance can also lead to making bad things more likely today, crimes, discrimination, and so on.
My time in Germany revealed that, above all, for FC São Paulo fans, coming to terms with the club's Nazi past is a historical responsibility, especially to prevent the rise of new authoritarian regimes.
Coming to such a conclusion reminded me of the words of German-born philosopher Karl Jaspers. Jaspers, who died as a Swiss emigre in 1969, probably never visited or heard of FC São Paulo. But his words echo and find a solid assurance in every corner of Miller-Thorn Stadium. After all, in this club, one thing is certain: there is no room for fascists.
My explorations of difficult heritage at FC São Paulo and Real Madrid reveals how looking back to the past is a challenge that not all clubs and societies wants to face. At Real Madrid, I could see how dictatorship and democracy, in theory, two opposite political regimes, can be sources of conscious amnesia.
Contemporary Spanish society still is divided over the events and consequences of the Spanish Civil War and Franco's regime. The suppression of these periods at Tour Bernabéu naturally reflects these macro-societal struggles.
In stark contrast, at FC São Paulo, much like most of German society post-reunification, there is a consensus that confrontations with the past must be part of any democratic political culture. Together, these two cases underscores how heritage and tourism can simultaneously promote historical awareness and space of remembrance, but also inaccurate past and intentional forgetting. Also, they reveal that in stadiums where politics finds welcoming spaces, difficult heritage are more likely to be discussed. It may seem cliché to say that football mirrors society, but by now, you would agree with me that football museums and stadium tours are not just simple spaces of an uncritical worship of the game's golden moments. They also reveal our relationships with our difficult pasts.
Tante periferie che sengen veladentes, le ben figli